Your brand may be staying on top of current trends, but are you agile enough to stay relevant, resilient, and successful as customers, competition, and the world continues to change at a breakneck pace? I'm thrilled to share the newly revised version of my first book, The Agile Brand. I'm calling it The Agile Brand Revisited. It's been updated to reflect our continually changing world, and it provides 7 principles that form the backbone of an agile brand, offering detailed insights and actionable steps for incorporating them into your business strategy. This is the book that started it all, and I'm excited to share it with you. It's now available in print and digital formats and available everywhere. Learn more by going to the Agile Brand Guide website at www.agilebrandguide.com. Welcome to Season 5 of The Agile Brand with Rik Chomko, where we talk with enterprise and technology platform leaders about the people, processes, and platforms that make marketing and customer experience successful, scalable, and sustainable. This is what creates an agile brand. I'm your host, Rik Chomko, advisor and consultant for Fortune 1000 marketing and CX leaders and teams as principal and chief strategist at GK5A, and best-selling author, keynote speaker, entrepreneur, and agile certified coach. The Agile Brand podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To sign up for the Agile Brand newsletter and get the latest insights and articles on marketing technology and CX, or to purchase a copy of my latest book, House of the Customer, go to gregkilstrom.com. You can also find all my books on Amazon and other retailers. And now on to the show. Today we're going to talk about some of the powerful ways that AI can augment human capabilities to make decisions, learn from those decisions, and automate processes to reduce errors and improve results. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Rik Chomko, CEO at InRule Technology. Rik, welcome to the show.
Hi, Greg. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, looking forward to talking about this with you. Let's get started with you giving a little background on yourself, as well as what you're currently doing at InRule.
Sure. So suffice to say, I've been in technology my whole life. I started my career working at a large health insurance company, and I think was kind of where I started the whole process of understanding how bad some of these automation projects can go. At first it was like delivering these massive technology automation projects. And then I spent part of my career working in consulting and witnessing the same thing, like seeing these projects and how the difficulty in getting them done and out the door. And as part of that, one of the areas where myself and my co-founder of InRule noticed that there's this huge area where we just always seem to fall short in how the applications were getting built and tailored to the business. And we weren't really tapping the part of the organization that really knew the business. And so when we started thinking about that, and we consulted and talked about it, it really talked about like how the configuration of these or the behavior of the application wasn't really easily described. I mean, we tried to do it inside of documents and inside of, requirements documents, those things, but a lot of times that loss in translation issue happens. So that's where we started the company I'm with now, InRule Technology. And what we do here is we focus on a platform where organizations can automate or augment decisions. So ultimately, a lot of times our customers have a better user experience.
Great. Wonderful. Well, yeah, let's dive in here. And so, we're here to talk about a few different ways that AI and automation can help businesses and leaders make better decisions, learn from those decisions, automate processes to be more successful. So why don't we start with the decisioning component? And so on the InRule website, you talk about no-code decision automation. What exactly does this mean, and what are some of the benefits of that approach?
Yeah, so when we think about decisioning, you can look at it from a lot of different angles, but the no-code automation decision is more or less what I referred to earlier, which is all kinds of organizations have a policy, right? Yeah. I mean, all types have their policy, and their policy is generally driven by their strategy, and often their strategy is informed by what types of people and accounts and customer profiles where they've had success in the past. And so decisioning is really about, in a lot of different stages of the customer journey, automating the decisions that are a reflection of the organizational policy. And so, do I want to sell my offering to this person or this company? And if so, how do I want to sell it to them? At what price do I want to sell it to them? Do I want to apply a discount? And then, how do I actually configure the product that I'm looking for?
Yeah.
It's all kinds of ways of tailoring offerings to customers that tends to be a win-win for both the customer and the company selling to the customer, because obviously the customer gets kind of what they're looking for in a more tailored fashion, but also from a company perspective, they're selling them at a price where they know that they can make a profit and but also service them so that they have happier customers.
Yeah. Yeah. And so leaders are chosen and because they have experience and they're supposed to have the answers already, right? And so
Right.
How do you work with leaders to I look at AI as augmentation, certainly not replacement of humans. So how do you work with leaders to enable automation to help augment their experience, their intuition, kind of all those reasons that they're hired as leaders to, to make those things better and really build on their insights?
Yeah, I think one thing that we do is try to talk to leaders about how they can make their processes more efficient by leveraging decisioning and AI, for that matter. If you look at, I mentioned the product configuration example. As a customer is going through a website, and there's one example that I like to use because it's a customer of ours, but they allow you to configure those four-wheelers, right, that you can drive on off-roading.
Yeah.
And like there's always this example of where if you're picking the roll bar and you want a Yeti cooler, they can't go together because you can't get the Yeti cooler out, right? So there's all these little moments of interaction, and product configuration is a really good one where the user experience is better because they don't get all the way down the line and put the order in and then find out that all of a sudden that they can't actually place the order, maybe 2 days later because those two products or configurations don't fit together.
Yeah.
So that's one really simple example. But as you start going down a little bit further, you also start getting happier customers because anytime there's sort of a post-sales involvement of decisioning too that improves the customer experience. Once I get into an agreement with a customer, I have to fulfill that contract, if you will, to the T's and C's of it. And the automated decision helps the customer experience here as well. And the example I always like to use is loyalty programs, right? So, I'm a hotel, frequent user. And if I go into a hotel and I'm at a certain level, I expect, the loyalty program to sort of be firing on all the things that I say that I am part of at my level and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And without sort of this automation there, it gets really difficult to maintain that policy. It can often be interpreted different ways, and that generally doesn't lead to a good customer experience because if you show up and you want your free breakfast and you don't get it, you're not going to be happy. So those are just a couple examples of where I think showing how at both the pre-sale and the post-sale, where there's automated decisions, a lot of times running in the background, helping either the people that are delivering things to the customer in real time, helping augment their experience and saying, yeah, this is what they should get, or this doesn't belong together. And ultimately, I think it helps the customer experience because there's no guessing in terms of how that policy should be implemented.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Well, so next, let's talk about how machine learning can help through predictions, providing more actionable insights. And I think you touched on some of this stuff already in the other, but just to dive in specifically, what role is machine learning and predictive analytics playing in a successful business? What's a reasonable expectation to achieve if an organization is relatively low on the maturity scale of AI adoption?
Predictive analytics have been going on inside of business for quite a few years now.
Yeah.
And I think that you've seen it in different places, right? Fraud detection is a really good example of where you're out traveling and maybe you go to a gas station too many times in too short of a period, and all of a sudden it's saying, we detect fraud. That kind of stuff. Or if someone actually does steal your credit card, that in fact is happening. That's a really good example of where machine learning and more predictive analytics have said, all right, well, if we see this happening, let's sort of put a stop to it.
Yeah.
But as we start going down and look further at like where ML and AI can play a bigger role, we start seeing it being applied to like, how can I start to like really customize and tailor my offerings to my customers at a price point that's, along a continuum that's very specific to the type of risk that I want to. And this is really more in insurance, but where it's very specific to that kind of customer. And those are the kind of things where we see ML playing a bigger role in sort of the process. And I think that then you look at further out, and this really where it comes in the customer experience piece. Because if you've ever had a ding on your car and there's been, like some sort of, damage done to it, the process of getting that auto claim adjudicated can take quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
What used to happen, right, is you take it to the claim adjuster, or they come out and they take some pictures, and then maybe a few weeks later you get some ruling on how much they're going to give you.
Right.
Machine learning is starting to step in with image recognition getting to where it is, and where machine learning is getting to where it is. We can start to look at it and go, okay, well, let the consumer take a picture of the damage, upload it, and literally within minutes, a machine learning algorithm should be able to determine, depending on the type of damage, right? If it's just a ding, how much it should cost to repair and whether or not your claim is just going to go through. And that to me is some of the really exciting things that are coming down the line from a machine learning perspective.
Before we continue, let's take a quick break. If you're like many marketing leaders today, you're inundated with a need to improve the customer experience across an increasing number of channels and touch points, all while ensuring your team is performing well, innovating, and continuously improving. So how do you find the time to determine what's next for you, your team, your brand, and your customers? My company, GK5A, can help. Whether it is advisory services, evaluation of marketing technology platforms and solutions, or digital agencies and implementation partners, or assistance with creating strategic roadmaps and prioritization of efforts, we've done it all and served as an ally to Fortune 1000 brands in industries like financial services, healthcare, consumer electronics, professional services, and more. You can learn more about these services and contact us at www.gk5a. That's www.gk5a.com. Now let's get back to the show. So you touched on this a little bit with the insurance example, but InRule certainly works in several industries, from retail to healthcare, financial services, and insurance. What are you seeing category leaders doing in this space, or where should companies be aspiring to go in terms of this type of prediction?
Yeah, I think the explainability is sort of the next level, right? Because we've all had this. I used the fraud detection example earlier, but like when it happened to me, I actually didn't know why it happened, and I happened to have rented an RV, right? And when you go to fill up the RV, it stops you at $100.
Oh, right, yeah.
So then I turn it off, put my credit card back in, and then it would, and then it denied me, and so I finally realized it was because I was doing it, but I didn't really realize it in the moment, and so those kinds of things. So that if you can have something that spits back to you right away and say you were denied because you tried this twice at the same gas station kind of thing, I think that's kind of where we need to get to next, is this explainability level. And I think it tends to have and sometimes it's more indirect, right, for a user, where maybe it's taking away from where a customer, like customer service inside of a company, they get, they're a lot of times bogged down with all kinds of requests. And if we can take away this stuff that's, truly, fraud or not worth spending time on. And I like the idea of like one company I heard of that's looking at people that are claiming whiplash injury when the car just kind of swiped the mirror off the car, right? That requires a lot of times a claims adjuster to look at it and then say, okay, this is clearly not something. But I don't think companies are as far along there as they could be. And with explainable ML and with this automation of saying, all right, well, let's do a similarity search and find all the kinds of fraud where we originally it was a human sort of doing that adjustment. Let's find those and see if we have a bunch of similar cases to it. And if we do, well, then we can probably auto adjudicate or at least augment adjudicate it
Yeah.
so that that sort of workload gets taken off the customer service and they can really spend their time with the customers that really matter, that are good paying customers and aren't trying to defraud the company.
Yeah, yeah. And so do you you mentioned a couple of use cases where, there's still some progress to be made. Do you have an example maybe where machine learning did help an organization make better decisions that, some of the things you're talking about, simply reviewing information and may not have been as successful?
Some of these get pretty far down the line on the back. I mean, there's all kinds of places where machine learning is helping on the front end for helping segment your customers and knowing which ones are going to be the better ones to sell to, those kinds of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
From a marketing perspective, which is still great. But I mean, I really get excited about the mission critical back end stuff where, I keep going back to fraud, but there's also where I'll use insurance companies again, where they tend to have people that are selling fake policies to
Mm.
users, right? And so identifying those kinds of situations faster, again, sort of frees up the company to focus on the good customers.
Yeah. 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 That's great. Well, so let's last topic I wanted to talk about today was AI and process automation. So we've kind of touched on this throughout as well, but wanted to focus on this specifically. And this is an area, in addition to predictive analytics, process automation. This is certainly an area that where AI and other tools have been in place for a while, though things continue to improve. Can you talk about some of the benefits that organizations see when they really embrace process automation?
Yeah, when your employees can focus at an organization on the stuff that actually matters, right? So
Yeah.
deepening those customer relationships and delivering the stuff, the outcomes that they're looking for, that's when you can get a lot of customer loyalty. And I think with process automation, we can streamline workflows, we can simplify, what's notoriously been error prone and time consuming tasks, and helping that whole process be more efficient. And I think that's where we often we think about it here at Human in the Loop, right? Because all the decisioning that we were doing up front, and I'm just going to take a side note here. And when I talk about AI, I think about both declarative reasoning, which is a lot of times rule based, which is that kind of contract based stuff I was talking about,
Yeah.
but also the machine learning side, which is all probabilistic. And we consider those all being under the umbrella of sort of that moniker AI. But when we have any kind of AI decisioning going on, there's going to be a point where we run into a situation where we can only augment the decision. We
Right.
can provide that information to the human that's sitting there in the loop that might need to weigh in on that situation, right? And
Right.
so, and if I'm offering up a product that might be outside the constraints of what we want to automate or fully automate, then I want to route it to a human and say, all right, okay, we've got this situation. It could be a really good thing for us, but we really want someone to weigh in on it before we pass it along and approve it.
Yeah.
So, like
Yeah.
if we look at in the retail industry, process automation is leveraged to streamline claims resolution, but we don't always know that we can resolve it right away because it might require a human loop.
Yeah. Yeah. And so everybody loves change, right? So some of this automation can often create change in people's roles, and that is often not met with open arms, let's just say. Having done this for a little bit myself. So, when talking about the human component of this, how have you seen leaders and businesses present improvements in automation in a way that those existing employees can really get on board with, instead of being afraid they're going to be replaced by AI or lose their jobs, or or things like that? Like what's a good way to propose what can often be a really positive change?
Yeah, I mean, I really like this topic because I think it is a huge misconception, and we've seen it play out over the many years that I've been building InRule. When we first started out, the big misconception from our perspective was that developers, because we were going to take and allow non-technical people to change the logic or change the behavior of an application through no code, that all of a sudden the programmer's job was going to go away.
Yeah.
And I think we've all seen in the news and everything else that that's not the case, right? Like
Right.
we continue to like drive more towards automation. There's more need for programmers. And the exciting thing, at least back then and even now, is that all this allows the programmer or the technical, highly technical person to focus on the strategic stuff. And I'm not saying that the rule development stuff isn't strategic. I'm just saying like they focus on stuff that's strategic to IT. Let the business focus on the rules and the policy that's strategic to them.
Yeah.
And then both sort of have this enabling moment. So I think about it the same way with process and other parts of the business, right? I think that there's still an opportunity for those people that maybe you're making something more efficient and their job may change a bit, or maybe it changes a lot, but there's plenty of work generally to do in an organization. Otherwise, we all wouldn't look around and go, well, I'm overworked, right?
Right.
You
Right.
know, there's always a place for someone to fall in and go, hey, I can now do this new task or new job. And I think the other sort of key piece here is we're enabling the stuff that I think doesn't require a lot of, it's sort of the rote, more task oriented stuff. And we're letting people and the humans actually weigh in on the stuff that is more substantial. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the other part of this where I think it's important to keep an eye on it and say, we're really like letting the human add more value where it matters.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess, just while we're on this topic, the flip side to that. So, we talked a little bit about this from the leader perspective and, what they can do. What should that employee be doing? Or let's say before a job gets automated or there's even talk of automation, what should employees, and obviously industries and roles can vary widely, but what should someone be doing that kind of sees this coming down the pike? And is there a way to prepare or to be thinking about, well, okay, what if 25-30% of my current job is automated? What would you recommend from that employee's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's focusing on, why are we trying to get to the outcome? Like, keep asking yourself. Like, I often say this, by the way. It's like ask why, right?
Yeah.
The 5 whys. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but keep asking why, and eventually you'll get to the place where what the outcome needs to be, or what that emotional connection of what everyone's trying to get to, and then think about how you can insert yourself into that part in a different aspect than what you might have been doing before. And then that's the part that helps. I think will really help you align to being more successful in finding a job in that process that may not be automated. But I mean, I think if you just say, well, if you don't really understand like what we're ultimately trying to get to, then you're going to have a problem figuring out where you can fit in further up the line. And
Yeah.
I have a whole thing on the why.
Yeah, no, I totally, and I love that exercise, and I agree with what you're saying. I mean, I think it's not like everybody needs to start using Chat GPT every day in their jobs or anything by all means, but it's like I feel like everybody needs to at least be familiar with what we're all talking about here, and so and try to kind of see the implications for your job in a good and a bad way. There's lots of ways to waste time using AI tools, and but there's so many ways that there can be improvements, and just letting humans focus on what humans do best, right?
Yeah, and that's the part that I often try to remind people at our company is, ultimately it's what focusing on where you can have a role and what you can do best, but ultimately like making sure we're aware of what the customer wants, and that also driven. I have this whole thing that I go into about like when you walk into a hardware store and you want to buy a drill, why do you want to buy that drill? Well, you want to buy the drill because you want to drill some holes, and you want to drill those holes because you want to hang some shelves, and you want to hang those shelves because you want to clean your garage. You want to clean your garage because ultimately you want to park your car in the garage because you're afraid that someone's going to slip on the driveway, or you can't find things. There's an emotional connection somewhere in there that you have to get to in order to sort of really understand why we're getting to the outcome or why we're doing our tasks.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's great. Well, Rik, thank you so much for joining the show. I've got one last question before we wrap up here. And, you've given a lot of great advice already, but just one thing, and maybe even summarizing some of what you said already, but, what's one piece of advice you'd have for an organization that knows they need to invest in greater automation, but maybe not sure where to start? What do you recommend?
Yeah, I guess it's going back to what's the outcome you want, and then is the organization ready to take on the effort? Yeah. So, and I think the last one too is because we've seen some failed projects, and I think we need this. The stakeholders have to be bought in, and they have to be ready to drive it, because if there's always going to be hiccups in a project, and if you don't have the right stakeholders sort of supporting it, it's gonna pause or it's gonna die out. So I would say, make sure you have support throughout the organization.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, again, I'd like to thank Rik Chomko, CEO at InRule Technology, for joining the show. You can learn more about Rik and InRule Technology by following the links in the show notes. Thanks again for listening to the Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe on your podcast channel of choice and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.gregkihlstrom.com. That's GREGKIHLSTROM.com. To get a copy of my latest book, House of the Customer, visit my website, or you can find it on Amazon or other retailers. The Agile Brand is produced by Missing Link, a Latina-owned, strategy-driven, creatively fueled production co-op. From ideation to creation, they craft human connections through intelligent, engaging, and informative content. Until next time, stay agile.